always get asked this question, is grad school worth it? Welcome back to another episode. We are going to be talking about, is a PhD worth it? And in general, is grad school even worth it? My name is Lauren and I am a fourth year PhD candidate in Houston, Texas. And I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about how I got into my PhD program and whether or not I think it's worth it. In short, is a PhD worth it? Possibly. It really depends. And I hope by the end of this video, you get a bit more clarity on if you should or should not be applying. If you look at my channel, I have a playlist called the Ultimate Grad School Application Guide. So that way you can learn about everything that goes into the graduate school process, whether it is going to be a PhD program, it could even be a master's program, but all things grad school related and that whole application cycle I have on my page that you can go watch. I think it's really important when you're describing if grad school is worth it, that you understand my background and my story. I went to Hampton University for undergrad, and during my junior year, COVID hit. All the way through, from freshman to junior year, I had planned to apply for medical school. So I was a cellular molecular biology major, but I also did summer research opportunities at MD Anderson. I talk about it on my page quite a bit, but all the while, I just knew 100,000% I was going to go to med school. COVID hit and that really changed everything for me. I had studied for the MCAT and didn't take it seriously. I did a lot of just talking with people and ultimately came to the decision I don't think that medical school was going to be right for me. Even if I got a terrible score on the MCAT, but even if I got a good score, I just don't think I would have been successful in medical school, because that's just not something, the whole process of med school, how test taking is and how everything is very just straight by the books, memorization, that's just not for me. And I'm someone who's always asked a lot of questions. I really want to be more hands-on. And from talking with different faculty at my undergrad, they suggested you might be best for a PhD program. Why not a master's program? Nobody suggested that. I think if somebody had suggested, Larry, you should just do a master's program, I probably would have just done that. But they said, shoot for the stars, honey, and do a PhD program. And that's what I did. So all throughout COVID, I worked for the City of Houston Health Department as a contact tracer and was applying for grad schools, and then got into the grad school that I'm in right now. I've always known that I wanted to do something that would make an impact using science. And so I just assumed that meant I had to be a medical doctor. But the more I had conversations with different people, reflected on my time doing summer internships, I realized that I had a level of creativity that I could use doing research that I wouldn't be able to do with medical school. I could ask questions throughout my graduate program and say, why does this happen to people? Why can some people do this and some people do that? You can answer all those questions with research. And so that's why I decided to just continue on doing research. And when I applied for my PhD program, my thought process was I will be a PI one day, I'd stick to academia and would just do research for the rest of my life. And then I got to grad school and everything changed. In my last video, I had said that the fourth year is when you crash out. And although true, some piece of advice that someone gave me is to talk to grad students at different stages in their graduate journey. And I think it's really interesting that when I make these videos, I can see when I first started versus now versus probably when I finish, mentally how I've changed. So that's pretty neat. Now that I am further along in my program and I've had a lot of conversations with people from different industries, ranging from pharma, academia, nonprofit, government, I recognize for whatever it is I want to do, I would need a PhD. I would want to be at a high level position, being able to make decisions, being able to strategize in a way that I don't think I would be able to do at this stage. I think some of the positions I'm interested in going into would require either a lot of experience or a knowledge set that a PhD would give you. Even if I had stuck with my original plan of going into academia, I would still need the PhD so I could either become a college professor, or if to work towards tenure, or if I wanted to have my own lab, even in the type of setting my graduate school is, because we don't have undergrads at my graduate school. It's just graduate and professional degree programs. Even if I wanted to run a lab, I knew I would need a PhD to take on that type of position and to be competitive in that way. This does not mean you need a PhD to do some of these things. Some of these jobs you can get by having a lot of experience, years and years of experience within the company, networking with people and having a great reputation in your work community. You can get some of these career opportunities by having different types of degrees. You can just have a master's, not just, but like you can have a master's and still have these high earning positions. You can have an MD, you can have a PharmD, depending on what it is you want to do. So doing research all throughout your time in grad school is extremely important. And that's why I said in one of my previous videos, it is never too early to prepare for what comes next after grad school. Another reason why you'd be contemplating if a PhD is worth it is the financial and time commitment. I am extremely blessed that I am in a program that I am not in debt over. How my program works is there are grants that support biomedical research, and I join my program and my school covers my tuition and they give me a stipend. So not only is school free, but I'm getting paid. It's not a whole bunch, but I'm getting paid. And then after the first 2 years, you will have a primary advisor who will put you on their grant, and they are responsible for helping cover tuition and pay your stipend throughout your time in grad school, however long that looks. Pros and cons of that. Pros, is free. School is free and you get paid. Con, if you can't find somebody with money, you're kind of screwed. So that's not going to happen. Schools will not have, well, let me not say it's not, because it happens. But for the most part, schools will not set you up to fail in that way. You should do your part to research your advisor to make sure they have the funds to support you throughout whatever time you think you will be in grad school. But you are also responsible to make sure that you have a general idea of how long you plan to be in school, which leads to my next point. The typical timeline for a PhD program, and this varies from program type to institution, ranges anywhere from 5.5 to 7.5 years. My school specifically, our average timeline is 5.5 years. God willing, I stick to that. If not, we're not even gonna if not. 5.5 years, I'm out of here, okay? The average timeline is 5.5 years. And in those 5.5 years, I know that my advisor will be able to financially support me. He can financially support me even longer, but we have that transparency of knowing, hey, this is the grant that he's working with, and the grant that I am on will last for X number of years. You want to make sure whatever your predicted graduation time is, you add an extra year. In case anything were to happen, you add an extra year and make sure that they are able to support you for your predicted timeline, the suggested timeline, plus a year. So that way you know for sure you will be like financially supported throughout your graduate program. That is so important before you join a PhD program that is set up in that way. If it is not set up in that way to where you're going to be financially supported by your institution, then that means you will be having to pay out of pocket. There are grants that you can apply for, scholarships you can apply for, but they are much more difficult to get because they're limited, and a lot of funding, as I'm sure you've learned, go to undergrads. A lot of focus is for undergrads. Another thing that you can look into is seeing, depending on the type of graduate program you're joining, or even if it's a special type of certification you need, if your company, so like if you're working a corporate job, if you can find a way to negotiate for them to either help pay a partial amount of your tuition, or to completely cover the tuition of your courses. There are people that are set up like that at my institution, where they are full-time like staff members, research assistants, and they are also in a graduate program that may or may not be affiliated with my grad school, but they are getting some type of coverage or like supplement to help them pay that tuition. I really hope that this was helpful, just to give you a general overview of if a PhD is worth it or not. I'm sure there are way more questions that I could have answered, and I think with time and as I continue to post and talk with more people, I'm sure I'll be able to answer them eventually. With that, thank you so much for tuning in. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to me on social media. You can drop a question in the comment, but make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, so that way we can stay in the loop and I can answer more questions about grad school preparation, and honestly, if it's all worth it. See you next time.